Hello everyone, welcome to the second video for Beowulf. We are going to talk about themes and some other important aspects of the epic. First, I want to talk about this idea of good versus evil. So for good versus evil, we have in this story, we have the good, who are the Gates, which are Beowulf's people. And then we have the Danes, which are Hrothgar's people, and those are going to be our good people. And then we also have this idea of evil, so good versus evil. And Grendel is called the Lord's outcast in the story. And even though, this story is mostly pagan, we still see these Christian values kind of intertwined. And for Grendel to be called the Lord's outcast, it's in reference to Cain. And if you are, if you remember way back to Sunday school, if you went to Sunday school, Cain killed Abel. And that would have been the worst thing that anyone could do in Anglo-Saxon culture. Loyalty and kinship are very important in Anglo-Saxon culture. So the idea that Cain kills his brother is unheard of or unthinkable. So Grendel is, the Lord's outcast. So Grendel is the ultimate evil being. I've given you a handout about Christian and pagan influences. We're going to talk a little bit about Christian and pagan influences in just a few minutes, but really look at that handout because it goes into a lot more detail about the differences in those Christian influences versus those pagan influences. And the same thing with fate. There is a handout about fate that goes into a lot more detail than I will cover in this video. Loyalty and allegiance are also some really important themes in Anglo-Saxon literature, especially in this particular epic. Most clearly, this loyalty and allegiance is seen through that comitatus relationship that we've been talking about. Thanes fight for a king. If the king dies, they avenge the king. They're very, very concerned with keeping their word and with loyalty. Those are all highly respectable qualities in a person. So we also have this idea about the importance of wealth and treasure. And this is linked to this idea of glory. If you have the ability to provide hospitality, you have the ability to give gifts to those, to your thanes, to those beneath you, so to speak. If you have the ability to be hospitable to strangers, like Hrothgar is to the Gates, to Beowulf, then you are to be glorified. So there's definitely an importance with wealth and with treasure. There's also this idea about the sanctity of home. Heorot is their home, and therefore it is worth dying for. And Hrothgar is very angry that his men are dying in his home and no one is avenging them. Avenging the death of a kinsman is very important in the Anglo-Saxon culture. So, that sanctity of home is very apparent in this story. And heroism and heroic deeds, we're going to spend some time talking about heroism. Beowulf primarily, he is the hero. He embodies heroism in the story. So let's talk a little bit about Anglo-Saxon society. So it is a tribal society where kinship bonds are of the utmost importance. But then they also everyone in the society followed this heroic code of behavior. How you act is going to depend on your reputation. Your reputation is going to be created by how you act around other people. And so they took that very, very seriously. One of the things that kind of aided in that reputation is this idea of bravery. So this is going to be Beowulf and his bravery. And then we see this loyalty to one's lord, so that comitatus. Loyalty is very important to Anglo-Saxon individuals. And then that willingness to avenge one's warband at all cost. death was preferable to exile. In Anglo-Saxon culture, it was preferable to die in battle than to lose and be shunned. So fighting to the death was very literal for this group of people. They also held on to this idea of the generosity of their lord to thanes, and of being heroic for their warband. This idea of gift giving. If you were wealthy enough to be able to give gifts to those around you, then you were heroic, you were worthy, you were glorified. And then the idea of heroism itself is just that. They did things, they were brave, they fought for their people and for their land, not to glorify God, but to glorify themselves. It brought honor to them, it brought power, political power to them. It ensured that they would never be forgotten, which was very important to Anglo-Saxon men and women. Some more of their values. We see, loyalty. We've talked about loyalty a great bit. They want to fight for their king, fight for their kinsmen. They avenge. If one family member kills the family member of someone else, then that family has to avenge their kinsman's death, and it goes back and forth until no one is left standing. And they are very adamant about keeping their word. If they say they're going to do something, it's going to happen. Generosity is also a value that they hold dear. Gift giving symbolizes bonds between men or families or groups of people. So if a lord gives another lord a gift, then they are bonded, they are friends, they don't fight one another. We also have this idea of brotherly love, especially in Beowulf. We don't see a lot of romantic love in this type of literature. Women aren't necessarily there for romantic partnerships, especially we see that in Beowulf. Women are there to keep peace. We'll talk about women in a second. But there is a love there, but it's a brotherly connection type of love. When we see heroism, we are looking at the physical strength, sometimes supernatural strength of the hero. Beowulf definitely falls into that category. He holds his breath for a really, really long time, so not humanly possible. He has supernatural strength, but he's also very skillful and resourceful in battle, and he's very courageous. Nobody else wants to fight Grendel because Grendel is killing and eating everyone. So he's also very courageous. So he checks all of the boxes for heroism in this epic. And everything that he does is for his public reputation. He wants everyone to look at him as a hero, as all Anglo-Saxon warriors wanted. The public perception of a man determined how good or bad of a man he was, and it has very little to do with his private conscience. It's not that he did this because getting rid of Grendel was the right thing to do. He fought Grendel because it would glorify him. Women, like I said before, women weren't necessarily a piece for romance in Anglo-Saxon society. They were the peacekeepers. They were often the glue that held bonds together. A woman would be married to a neighboring family or a neighboring country, and if she bore children, then that would create a blood tie between the two groups of people. So, and like we've said, that blood tie is very important in Anglo-Saxon society. When you don't fight with your kin, it's unheard of. So if a woman has children with a man who belongs to a different country, then her family's country and her children create a blood tie between those two nations. Women pass the cup at the mead hall. So during festivals, and that kind of cements a social bond between her and whoever is in the mead hall. And probably one of the most important is women lament loss, but they do not avenge loss. They are not the ones going out and avenging the deaths of their family members. That's the men's job in this culture. And then we have religion. So there's a lot of religion, a lot of religious stuff happening here. There's a lot of mix of pagan and Christian values. Oftentimes, especially in Beowulf, those two ideas kind of conflict with each other. We obviously have pagan. Okay, the Anglo-Saxon is predominantly pagan, but then we have this conflicts with Christian ideas. So pagan lineage focuses on family lines, family lineage. So the son of Hrothgar, the son of this person, the son of this person. So it's very reliant on your bloodline. But in that Christian values, it's more like everyone is a brother and sister in Christ. There is no one person that is better or worse than another because of their bloodline. Everyone is equal because we're all brothers and sisters in Christ. Whereas in paganism, for the Anglo-Saxons, it was very much about who your parents were, who your father was. This eternal earthly fame through deeds, this is where that glory comes in. If an Anglo-Saxon warrior died in battle, or he did wonderful, great, awesome things in battle, then he would be remembered forever. And that's a little different from the Christian values, because Christian values offered this afterlife of heaven or hell. Another difference in the pagan values versus the Christian values that we kind of see play against each other is this honor and gift giving. If a lord is wealthy enough to give gifts, then he will do so, and that is a source of glory and pride for him. But for Christian values, pride or hubris, that excessive pride, is a sin. So we've got those two ideas kind of fighting back and forth. Anglo-Saxons absolutely relied on the idea of vengeance or revenge if someone wrongs them or their family, and that is the exact opposite of Christian values, because Christian values are much more pacifist. So there's this idea of forgiveness instead of vengeance. And then we have that weird. We talked about this in the first video. Weird is Anglo-Saxon for fate. And that is representative almost of God's will, that there is really nothing that man can do, that if it's going to happen, it's going to happen. And then the last thing that we're going to talk about is what is an epic. So in an epic, you have this hero figure that is of great national importance and represents this heroic ideal. So what I mean by this heroic ideal is he represents the heroic ideal of the culture in the epic. So Beowulf is Anglo-Saxon. So Beowulf, the character, represents the ultimate hero for Anglo-Saxon warriors to look up to. The setting of the poem is vast in scale. It may be worldwide. Beowulf travels a long way to be where he is and to fight Grendel and Grendel's mother. The action requires great valor and involves superhuman deeds in battle. So we definitely see that in Beowulf. He can hold his breath for a really long time. He has superhuman strength. In these great actions, gods and other supernatural beings take an interest or an active part, and that's kind of where some of those the Judeo-Christian God is mentioned a few times, and that's not just because of the translation where that Christian monk was translating the story. It actually was in the original manuscript because other supernatural beings are taking an interest in the deeds of Beowulf. And then an epic poem is, it's like a ceremonial performance. It has all of these formal words, and it's supposed to be very grandiose and, larger than life. And so we definitely see that in the language of the story itself. And the last thing that we're going to talk about is the epic heroic qualities. We've already discussed all of these things. It's significant and glorified. Beowulf is on a quest. He has the superhuman strength. He's ethical. He doesn't just kill things to kill things. He kills things for a reason, and he risks death for glory. So he is everything that an epic hero should be. Thank you for watching, and more to come.